Hello and welcome back to the Alexander Society podcast. I'm your host Tim, who's going to send you on a wild goose chase with a bomb trapped around your neck that is supposedly fake, but will actually go off and not be able to be defused. And here is Derek, who will kill you and put you in a fridge for his girlfriend.
Hold on. I have heard this story about the bomb on the neck. I have heard this before. This is going to be so great. It's such a dumb story, isn't it? If I'm remembering correctly.
It is. The intricacies of this case are like, this is the law enforcement solving in spite of their buffoonery.
Oh, this is going to be a good one. Okay.
It's not the worst handled case. It's not like OJ level case, but like the case solved itself for them essentially, in my opinion. So back on track. How are you doing tonight, Derek?
Let's let the audience know, just like you were figuring out, I'm really tired. Like you were hearing from me before we started recording. My brain has not been working right all day.
I was there week before last or so.
Yeah, no idea why. I don't know. Tim, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. So, Derek, what you drinking tonight? What bad decision are you going to tell our audience about in your liquor choice?
Yeah, so I got, for my beer, I'm doing Hocheweizen Wheat Ale from Mountain Fork Brewery in Hochatown, Oklahoma. Light beer, Big Ol' Blondie, 5.5% alcohol by volume. This stuff is fantastic. This is an incredibly smooth beer. It's a really like subdued like blonde wheat beer. But yeah, it's like a German style like Weizen beer, a light beer. It's fantastic. I had a few sips because I had to clean up this weird head that just keeps like bubbling out of the can. I don't know what the fuck. Anyways, for my shots, I'm doing and I've already gotten my grief for this from Tim. So don't get on my ass about this. This is a Twisted Tea Sweet Tea Whiskey. It's 32.5%. It's really, really sweet, which I don't know why I didn't expect that. It literally says sweet tea on the label, but
I had to point that out to him, by the way, audience.
Yeah. It threw me off because I don't expect that sort of sweetness from a whiskey, completely forgetting about the sweet tea part when I tried it. It's actually pretty good though. I'll stand by it. It's pretty good. I've had I think one other like sweet tea whiskey before. It was not balanced very well. It had a weird aftertaste. This one's actually pretty good. It's sweet, and it's pretty smooth. Like it's an easy drink. It's not too bad. I think the flavors balance well. Anyways, Tim, what are you drinking?
So tonight I found an interesting beer from Great Divide. Oh, it's from Denver. Yeah, I should have remembered that. It's a brewery in Denver, Colorado, and it's called Wild Raspberry Ale. It's an ale. It's 4.8%. So I took a couple sips while you were dealing with your bubbly crisis, and the hop is in your face, which I normally hate. But so it's like hop in your face, like with like Coors or whatever, like all you get is the hoppiness. But because the raspberry's there as well, and like it tastes similar. I don't want to say it's exactly like that, brew-wise. You remember those St. Bernard beers I had back in December?
Yeah.
It gives me that vibe because those were hoppy, but not like both not and also yes in your face. I don't know how it was both, but it was. So like it reminds me a bit of that with raspberry, and I like it. I don't know why. I like if I described this to myself in the past, I probably would have passed on it. Like,
yeah, the hops are prominent but not pretentious.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And then for my liquor this week, I'm back to Blackheart. This is again one of my episodes where we're not going to have a whole lot of rules, so like we probably won't have too much liquor, but we'll see. Derek's our liquor wiser or monger or whatever it's called.
Or liquor monger.
Yeah. Derek's the liquor monger. So let's go ahead and have our beginning of the episode shot. Cheers.
Prost.
So we're talking about the infamous I originally thought it was pizza bombing, but it's collar bombing is the official title. But we're talking about the death of Brian Wells. And Brian Wells was a general, kind of like you go guy. He was born in Warren, Pennsylvania, to Rose and Harold Wells. Harold was a Korean War veteran, and he dropped out of high school in 73 at 16 years old and went to work as a mechanic. So, like, not real well educated, no one's outright says it, and I'm not trying to say this in a disrespectful way, but have you ever met someone that just, they're not mentally deficient, but they're just slow? Like, not even, like, stupid, just, like, slow.
Oh, yeah. You're describing my entire high school.
Yeah, fair. So there is two ways of knowing. So it's known as the collar bomb case or the pizza bomber case. So yeah, I was right.
That's opening up so many questions, that description.
Yes. So at the time of his death, Brian Wells was known for being, and he'd been a pizza boy, delivery boy for 10 years. So for the last 10 years of his life, he's delivering pizza. And he's dedicated to this. Like, he's only missed work once. And you want to know why he missed work once in that 10 years?
Somebody died?
His cat.
Oh.
Called in because his cat.
Oh, poor kitty.
Yeah, and that's kind of understandable. Like, I would, if I lost a pet, I would be devastated. Like, that's a call-in worthy for me personally.
Yeah, there's not a force on Earth, there's not a government on Earth that could compel me to go into work after losing a pet. There's no way.
What do you remember of this case? Because you mentioned at the beginning that you kind of vaguely remembered this.
The main thing I remember is there was like a bank heist, and it ended with like a hostage situation where a guy... No
hostages in this case.
Oh, shit. Am I thinking of a different
possibly
case involving a bomb wrapped around somebody?
So, the only person that was technically a hostage was the person robbing the bank.
Okay, yeah. I think, because what I have in my mind is this video of like the police like camped out in front of the bank, and a guy like sitting around. No,
doesn't happen at the bank. So let's just get into it. I think what's happening is you've heard of a couple different bank heists and like similar like bombing cases, and you're kind of like getting your wires crossed.
Okay. Does the bomb actually go off?
Yes.
Okay. It might be the one I'm thinking of then, because I've seen the video of...
So on August 28th, so the 20-year anniversary was a couple weeks back, actually. I didn't even realize that.
Better timing than we could do on purpose.
Yeah, honestly. Like I said, he was at Mama Mia's Pizzeria in Erie, Pennsylvania. He had been there for 10 years. They received an order from a payphone at a nearby gas station.
Mm-hmm.
The owner couldn't understand what they were saying. Like, payphones, like, even for the day, I think they were pretty shit, to be honest. Like, understanding-wise, like, it's always... Like, I remember seeing payphones at, like, Walmart back in the day, and they just weren't that great sounding, even for then.
Yeah. They cost $0.25 to use. You can't expect much out of them.
True. And so Wells took the call, and he received an order of 2, oddly enough, we know what kind of pizzas, 2 sausage pizzas, 8631 Peach Street, a few miles from the pizzeria. What was weird about this is this wasn't a residential address. This wasn't like a business. This was just where the transmitting tower for the local TV station, WSEE TV, was at. It was at the end of a dirt road. This isn't like you don't expect people to be there.
Yeah, if I'm sent to deliver something to the end of a dirt road, and there's just a broadcasting tower at the end of it, I'm expecting to either be delivering to a bunch of kids who are higher than any human being has ever been in their lives, or I'm about to be murdered.
They think they're higher than any human being has ever been.
Or it could be both. They could just be sitting around smoking. They see me rolling up with their pizza, and they're like, "Hey, we should kill this guy."
Before his death, Wells claimed it was 3 black men who attacked him, pointed guns at him, and put a collar around his neck. And it is a gnarly looking device. I'm actually looking at it right now. Let me see if I can't get that sent to you real quick, Derek, because It does not look pretty, and it does not look like he. So, for context, here is your bomb that was wrapped around his neck.
Ooh, that is some makeshift shit.
Yes.
That is some trailer park engineering right there.
Yeah.
God, yeah. Gnarly is the only way you could describe that. That's accurate.
So they described the bomb as a hinged collar that worked like a large handcuff. Honestly, looks a lot like a handcuff. Like, if you could, you gotta agree, right? Like, looks like an oversized handcuff. With 4 keyholes that went under the chin and a rectangular housing that contained 2 pipe bombs, 2 kitchen timers, 1 electric timer that hung down over his chest, and there were several decoys, such as like an unconnected wires and a toy cell phone, and there's a bunch of stickers about warnings about like, hey, you do this, it'll go off, blah 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 blah, making it look more sophisticated than it was, because it's pretty basic right there. Like, I mean, yeah, it's still a bomb that's gonna kill your ass.
Now I'm noticing that this seems awfully intact. Was this like an extra or a spare that they found?
No, we'll get to that later, and the reason why is fucked up. The current theory is that he arrived at the tower, and originally, I don't know if I agree or not, it was believed Wells was in on it. But what it was supposed to be is he was in on robbing the bank, and it was supposed to be a fake bomb. Yeah, so what it was supposed to be is he was robbing the bank, and they were getting money for someone, and he was going to get a share. He was going to be in on it. I don't know if I'll be able to give you the details that explain why, just because what I'm using isn't that well researched. I'm literally using Wikipedia and a couple other websites, but I will shout out, I want to watch it. I haven't gotten to it yet. There is a really good Netflix documentary called Evil Genius. It's a 4-parter. Each part is about an hour. And they have even stuff that wasn't out at the time in there. Like, they went and they did some good research for this one. The theory is that Wells when he got there, they accosted him at gunpoint. And they put it around his neck, the bomb. And we have no evidence of exactly how it happened. Could have been a gunshot. Could have been not. Like, he wasn't shot, but like firing in the air or like nearby, I'm assuming. There suggests there was a struggle. I guess I don't know why there would have been a struggle if he was in on it, to be perfectly honest. Like, I don't believe he was in on it, at least not to the point where he knew it was going to be a real bomb. Like, it obviously wasn't, he wasn't going to make it out of there, is what I've come out to believe. At this time, Wells was giving a homemade shotgun shaped like a cane. And he was also given a shirt. Like, this shirt is not what he showed up to the delivery in. It says Guess. It's like a brand at the time.
Oh, yeah, that's still a brand. Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah. I've never heard of Guess, but it was a Guess shirt. It was a white Guess shirt.
Kind of basic bitch, but all right.
Well, it has Guess across the front.
Yeah. It's just, whenever I see Guess, that's just kind of like a basic bitch brand that I don't know. Maybe that's just me being
I didn't hear about it before this case.
If I remember correctly, it's kind of like, it's like Gucci for people who can't afford Gucci.
I think it was the proto Gucci for broke bitches.
Oh, I don't know. I might be wrong though. What the fuck do I know?
So, like, we don't have a whole lot of details on how exactly this happened, to be honest. How the bomb got around his neck. I think there are some claim that it was perfectly fitted to his neck. The way it looks, it probably wasn't perfectly fitted, or it was a lucky guess or something, the way the bomb looks. So what they did is they threw the bomb around his neck, told him to claim 3 black men had forced the bomb on him, and they were holding him hostage. That's what the general idea is. Inside his cards, they found bomb hostage notes. Not notes, but like a scavenger hunt. Pages with instructions. It directed him to rob a bank, and it had, like I said, a scavenger hunt. And it literally had a series of timed tasks on collecting the keys, or else the bomb would go off. And it warned that Wells would be on constant surveillance. And if he contacted the cops, they could just. I think the idea was they would be able to remote bomb, remote detonate, if they saw him doing that.
When was this again? What was the date?
It was August 28th, 2003.
Okay, 2003.
Well, I said 20-year anniversary. I don't think I said the year, but I said 20-year anniversary. So what happened is Wells entered the bank. It was a PNC bank at Summit Town Center on Peach Street. So probably not too far from where he was taken hostage. Relatively, at least, And he had a note that just demanded $250,000. So, $250,000. So $250,000. He was supposed to threaten anyone who did not cooperate or attempted to flee. He entered at 2:30 p.m. and slid the note to the teller. The note said that the bomb would explode in 15 minutes and the full amount must be handed over within that time. The issue was, this is one of those, even for then, this was a sophisticated kind of bank. You had to have 2 supervisors to open the vault. They had 1.
Ooh, that's not a good situation to be in. So
the teller handed over $8,702. Wells didn't seem to put up a fight. I don't know if Wells was told it wasn't the full amount, but everything I've seen implies he knew it wasn't the full amount, and he didn't have a whole big a deal. He didn't even pay attention to anyone else. He was just I didn't even hear of anything like he was brandishing the shotgun cane around or anything like that. I listened to a couple YouTube videos on this. Everything I've seen is he just walked in calmly with the bomb around his neck, passed over the note, got the money. People were leaving and running, and he didn't bother. He wasn't worried about around there. Around 2:38, so 8 minutes from entering, a witness called 911 after fleeing, and they reported a male leaving the bank with a bomb or something wrapped around his neck. This is the first known call. Like I said, after entering the bank, Wells waited in line. So he didn't even just go in there and be like, I have a bomb or blah, 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 blah. He just calmly waited in line. Next person, and waited.
Okay, wait a minute. He knows he's on a timer.
That's why I said I think he's slow. That's one of the reasons. The other is thinking you were going to get a fake bomb.
I'm sorry. I feel so bad for laughing, but it's just... He's got a bomb on a timer strapped to his neck that if he doesn't get this done in the right amount of time, he's on a time limit to get this bank robbed, and he's just waiting in line. His mom's breathing down his neck.
Kind of dumb, kind of what in the hell?
You want to take a shot for that?
Cheers.
Prost.
Another thing that's going to probably make you giggle. Guess what he did when he got to the counter after handing over the note and all that?
What would be the slowest on the uptake thing to do in this situation? Okay, you're gonna have to tell me.
You know how some banks will have suckers?
No.
Yes, he took it. It's called a lollipop, but I'm guessing it was a sucker. He took a lollipop.
Okay, I'm sure this guy's probably traumatized, right? And his brain is probably...
We don't have enough of his profile to know that. We don't know any... from what I've seen around, his early life isn't documented. All of his life that we really know about is basically what I told you, and then the crime.
Yeah, I'm just imagining this guy just on autopilot, and he just sees...
You're going to giggle a little bit more. Guess what he did as he was leaving the bank?
Oh, what the...
He was described as content, swinging his cane gun and the bag of money as, quote-unquote, like Charlie Chaplin, according to one witness. Chaplin.
If you're lost and you don't know where else to go to, why don't you go where fashion sits? But none there is. Just with a bomb strapped to his neck.
Yeah.
Oh, I feel so bad. This poor guy. Okay, I really shouldn't be laughing. This poor guy is about to die in one of the most horrific ways I can imagine.
So that's also another thing that's not clear is when he became aware it was real. It's one of those things at the bank. I feel like he doesn't know it's real, but also way it's described when it was put on, he knew it was real. Like, I don't know.
Yeah,
15 minutes after he left the bank, he had completed his first task in his scavenger hunt. He proceeded to his second task, which was retrieving a key, I believe, and like he was supposed to drop off the money or something like that. Around, I think, a McDonald's is what I was told. Food, eatery, something like that. And they immediately tell him to get out. They do the whole thing. They stand off kind of thing. They handcuff him. They left him sitting in the middle of a parking lot. And he said, that's where the 3 black men story came around. Put the bomb around his neck. Gave him the shotgun. Told him that they would kill him unless he committed the robbery and completed several other tasks. The law enforcement officers there did not try and disarm the device. Instead, they focused on clearing the area. That's honestly the smart thing to do. You don't want to mess with a bomb. You don't know what you're doing. Like, they called the bomb squad at least 30 minutes after the first 911 call, about 10 minutes after Wells was arrested. So relatively quickly after that.
Yeah, uncomfortable.
They were called at 3:04. They were called at 3:04.
Yeah, uncomfortably long considering the situation, but
I don't think it's a big town either, though. Like,
okay, yeah. So like in terms of like emergency first responders, getting a bomb squad called within like 30 minutes of the first phone call, that seems pretty quick. But then like you got to keep in mind like there's kind of a timer on this bomb.
This is also 2003 too.
Yeah, overall, it kind of uncomfortably close.
At 3:18, 3 minutes before the bomb squad arrives, while local news is around, recording, streaming the whole situation, like, local news is streaming, hey, this man has a bomb wrapped around his neck. Like, all that. At 3:18, like I said, 3 minutes before the bomb squad arrives, the bomb detonates. While the newspaper are live. The only reason why it wasn't live broadcasted, like I threw you for a loop earlier, is because there was a technical issue. And somehow that part didn't get live streamed. Well, live broadcast, I guess is the proper term. It blasted a fist-sized hole in Will's chest, killing him within seconds. The reason why the bomb squad arrived 3 minutes after his death is because traffic was congested in the area. According to the ATF, though, it was still a rapid response, which not bad, all things considering. It's like I would like better, but like not bad.
Yeah, like you can only expect so much from like how fast first responders can react to a situation like this.
The local news station, WJET TV, the ABC affiliate, was the one that was broadcasting the event live. The station provided the footage to the FBI. The footage was subsequently leaked to a shock jock on DC 101, a radio station in Washington, D.C., who posted it on his website in September 2003.
Oh, God.
He took it down, but like the more you try and get rid of it, the more people repost something on the internet.
The Streisand effect.
Yes, the Streisand effect. It had already been posted to numerous video sharing sites, so it was like, there's videos of his death out there, and I'm sure you may have seen it or may have not.
Yeah, I think that's the one I saw. The way that the setting that you described, like that's what I remember actually watching. So I think I've actually seen this video.
Yeah. Another depressing thing about this, although the note claimed Wells would gain extra time with each key he found, they found that you could not get to the key in time. No matter how you timed it, no matter how fast you were, you would not have been able to get to the bomb. Man,
come on. Oh, that sucks so hard.
Yeah.
Oh, this poor guy. Oh, man, he was just a random pizza delivery guy. Like, he didn't deserve this.
He was a content pizza delivery guy, yeah. The next part, I'm almost certain you're going to want to take a shot for. It's the part why I was explaining why the bomb was so intact. The bomb collar was still intact, so authorities were forced to decapitate Wells's head from his body so the bomb could be retained and investigated.
Okay, yeah, let's go ahead and prost.
Cheers.
Oh, God, what an awful...
Now, before we get into, like, the moral implications of that, I understand why investigatively you would want to do that. I would do everything in my fucking power not to, though. It had been a cold day of hell before I did that, though.
Yeah, and I'm sure it was like done by.
It was probably the coroner.
Man, what a there was no other way that they could have taken it off, or did they need to keep it intact for evidence? Like
they were trying to study it. So here's like, I don't know if it's really should be a consideration, but I'm gonna go ahead and put it in there because one of the videos I talked about was focusing on it. So I don't know if that was a thought at the time, but it, at least in hindsight, this is a connection to the case. There were a lot of people paralleling it to Saw.
Oh, yeah.
Another thing that at first seems unrelated, and it was never proven, there was only one other delivery boy, and it seems weird. Just 3 days later dies. Can you guess how he dies, Derek?
If you say a bomb, I'm going to be so upset.
I wouldn't say seems unrelated if he died of a bomb.
Yeah, you're right.
He died of a drug overdose at his home. We're not too confident about that from what I understand. I could, I haven't looked and dug into this, so don't tell me. Don't guess that.
I don't know, Pete. That is how I would expect somebody who's a pizza delivery guy to die. Either that or being robbed. Like that's how I would expect.
Is an OD? Yeah. I can't say you're wrong. Like I definitely, like, if someone's gonna die while doing that job, I can't really say you're wrong.
Yeah, it's either gonna be a mugger or heroin. Like, but I don't know. That strikes me as like kind of a coincidence.
We don't know a whole lot about the investigation in between there and September 20th. So, on September 20th, I'm going to try and like remove the stuff that I'll talk about later in the story. But apparently he was implicated in a 1977 murder after he gave a handgun to a friend who used it to murder a romantic rival. And he later attempted to destroy this weapon, but was granted immunity from prosecution in exchange for his testimony.
Okay, and this is
who is coming up next. We haven't met him yet in the story, but I'll put it this way. He calls 911 on September 20th, and this is his background. We don't know what you're about to find out why he's calling 911. He was a handyman and a part-time shop teacher. Is that raising any red flags?
Part-time shop teacher. I'd expect them to sell drugs on the side. That's my initial reaction. So probably involved in some shady stuff. Oh, handyman and shop teacher. He's the kind of guy who would make a bomb brace like that. He'd have the knowledge to do that.
Yep. So he was also part of a intellectual group of people who were not well adjusted called the fractured intellectuals.
That just sounds awful. That sounds like a horrible time.
It sounds like a bunch of pretentious people who can't integrate with society, so they decided that we're going to create a group of our own.
It sounds like Mensa for dumb people who think they're smart.
Right now, I'm going to go ahead and introduce a lot of our players that are about to come up. So there's Marjorie Eleanor Dihel Armstrong. She's kind of like this, I wouldn't say rich bitch, but like she's a college educated person. They're like middle class solidly, but come into a lump sum, but they didn't like fully blow it, but like kind of blew it. So they have a little bit of money, but not like enough, if you get what I'm saying.
Okay. I'm starting to get kind of the profile of this group so far.
Kenneth Barnes, someone finally with a regular name. He was a retired television repairman, a crack dealer, and Marge's fishing buddy. And next person we have is Floyd Arthur J. Stockton.
Another double middle. What the fuck is this?
No, that's not. They're not double middle names. Those are the nicknames. That was their referred to name.
Oh, okay.
this guy was a map. Yes, I was waiting for you to get that. Jay Stockton was convicted of raping a disabled teenager.
Oh, that's so much worse.
He was a fugitive that lived in Rothstein's house.
And he was a fugitive too. Wait, what was he? Okay, keep going.
It doesn't say. It's just he was a fugitive. Maybe he ran away from during his conviction of the rape of a teenager. Something like that, I would assume. Guess how many of these 4 are hoarders?
I'm guessing all 4 of them. This is redneck Mensa is what it is.
Stockton was not a hoarder, but since he lived with Rothstein, there's only 3 houses, and all 3 houses were hoarded to shit.
All 3 buildings that no longer exist because they were all condemned.
Probably. I'm not going to lie. Probably.
3 houses that went during the cleanup before they knocked the buildings down. They found like 7 total petrified dogs.
I think they actually did find a petrified dog.
Oh my god. Every time
you try and make a joke, it just like backfires.
Man, I can't have shit on this podcast.
So, back to September 20th. Rothstein, so the one who's housing a pedophile, who just so happens to have lived near the radio tower.
Oh.
He calls the police to inform them that the body of a man named James Roden was hidden in his freezer at his house. Any words, Derek? You've got that face.
911, what's your emergency? Yeah, I've got a body in my freezer.
After he phoned the police, he wrote a suicide note.
Oh no, that's not a good sign.
And in his note, he claimed his planned death had nothing to do with Wells. Everything we know right now, he's not even remotely tied to the Wells case. And his suicide note that he doesn't use claims that his death has nothing to do with the Wells case.
Listen, I want to die. I'm gonna kill myself. It doesn't have anything to do with that bomb.
This wholly unrelated case I was never connected to.
Yeah, this bomb that I obviously had nothing to do with.
Before he calls the cops, even if they found the body and all that, it all came out. I put it on the web. I don't think they would have connected him to the case if he didn't have that suicide note. By the way, they do not believe he ever attempted suicide.
What?
What? No, it's fucking weird. The evidence of his attempted suicide. There's just a bag of blood and a razor blade in his house. That's his evidence of attempted suicide outside the note.
That sounds more like he was going to fake his suicide and then have his body randomly disappear, and he's just actually, running out into the wilderness.
That or he gets a fake corpse. Okay, so the body, James Roden, had been living with Marjorie Armstrong for 10 years.
What the fuck? There's just another... What? Who's choosing to live in a hoarder house? What is...
We got, out of all the characters in this case, other than Brian Wells, we know very little about James Roden either.
Was this guy a fugitive too? What the fuck is this?
I don't have anything on him, Roden. Nothing. After he's brought in, because you have a fucking dead body in your freezer, of course you're getting brought downtown. He claims that Armstrong had murdered her then boyfriend Roden with a 12-gauge shotgun over a dispute over money.
I had no idea this story was this white trash. This is how...
Yes! I told you there was, a lot of connections in this story that make no fucking sense. Until you're oh, this is the dot, this is the dot, this is the dot.
Okay. I thought that... this is, of course, this is my mistake, thinking that a case that involved a timed bomb strapped to a man's neck in order to compel him to go rob a bank and then have the guy like clean himself up to prevent any witnesses. You know, I figured that have a little bit more competence involved. And of course, that's my mistake for thinking there was some competence involved in this situation. And it just turns out there's one guy who knows how to make a bomb and attach it to a clamp, and then everything else is exactly the same as every other like white trash murder case I've ever heard.
Yep. Rothstein claimed that Armstrong paid him $2,000 to help hide the body, then clean up the crime scene. And little backstory with Armstrong and Rothstein, how they know each other is, I think they dated, and Rothstein dated Armstrong in the late 60s and early 70s. And I forgot to add some backstory on Armstrong. In 1984, Armstrong shot her boyfriend, Robert Thomas, 6 times as he laid on a couch, but was acquitted on self-defense because she said he beat her. Battered wife syndrome, essentially.
I can believe it.
Her husband and several other partners also died under mysterious circumstances.
Okay, now I'm starting to suspect less. Okay. Every single sentence that you say just adds more.
What the fuck energy?
This got so weird so fast. You've got.
It's not an open and shut like, hey, this guy got bombed because these people put the bomb around his neck. It's like, this weird thing happened, with this weird thing happened, with this weird thing happened, that this weird thing happened. You've got
Redneck Mensa who now have at least one body under their belt in this particular decade. Possibly 2, but definitely at least 1, probably more, in the last 30, 40 years or so. This is the backstory to that fucked up video I watched when I was depressed?
This is why I love telling you true crime cases, because your reactions are fucking beautiful, Derek. I bet you want to know how this is all tied together.
Yeah, I would like to know, yes, because it's ever since that fake suicide note, I've been very invested.
Rothstein, Barnes, and Armstrong were just together one day, figuring out ways they could make money. Want to know what they figured out?
Strap a bomb to a guy and make him go rob a bank?
I mean, eventually, yes, but they had another criminal plan that they thought of, but they couldn't fund it first. So they decided to create this one first. They decided they would kill Armstrong's father, Harold Diehl, or however, Dehill, so she could receive her inheritance. And guess what Barnes told Armstrong? He said, I've got a price to kill him. Do you know what that price was, Derek?
Less than $2,000?
No. Surprisingly, most murders are like around that ballpark, under $10,000. He said he'd do it for $250,000. The exact amount that Wells was supposed to request. Which, in 2022 money, is $397,703.
That's more money than all 3 of them have touched in their entire lives combined.
Probably. Like, at least at one time. The collar bomb bank robbery plot was hatched to obtain money to pay Barnes to kill Armstrong's father. Do you want to take a shot, buddy? Cheers! Rothstein created the bomb. Only one with the skills to have done it.
Yeah, it's uncomfortably easy to make a pipe bomb, actually.
Now we know why why all that happened. Can you guess why there's 2 kind of reasons why Rothstein kind of like flipped egg on Armstrong. Can you guess why? Either of the 2 reasons?
I'm guessing they got into an argument about some dumb shit around just Just some dumb friend drama.
No. So, supposedly his, like, last straw was she wanted him to dispose of the body. Like, wood chipper.
And he didn't want to do that.
No, that was apparently a bridge too far.
You're already in it, man. You already committed.
So, with the death of Roden, James Roden, in 2005, Armstrong pled guilty, but mentally ill to third-degree murder. How the fuck did she get third degree on that, by the way? Do you know the differences in degrees of murder, generally speaking?
Yeah.
She pleaded mentally ill and abuse of a corpse for killing Rod. She got between 7 and 20 years. Do you know why she killed him?
Oh, it's gonna be some white trash stuff, isn't it? No. Is it gonna be some money stuff?
No.
Is it gonna be something dumber than either of the two I just said?
No, it's actually pretty reasonable given the case. The theory is that he was gonna let them know about the robbery. Like, he was gonna, like, snitch on her about the robbery. Like, the bank heist, all that.
Okay. Yeah,
That's, like, given everything there, that makes sense. Like, yes, you would kill them for that. Like, those dots connect. No white trashiness to it.
Yeah, but they created a conspiracy to murder a man that they first forced to rob a bank for them, and then none of them are willing to commit to the consequences of trying to clean up after it. Which, you know, is white trash in spirit, if nothing else, for what that's worth. Oh God, these people suck so hard.
In April of 2005. So here's the thing, though. Rothstein turns everyone over and all that. They still don't know about the connection to Wells at this time. They don't know that the Wells case is involved.
I haven't found that suicide note yet.
No, they know about the suicide note. But, like, other than that, they have no connection. Oh, that's an odd thing. Like, they have nothing linking the cases, essentially.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
In April of 2005, Armstrong tells the state trooper that she has information about the Wells case, and after meeting with FBI agents, she would tell them everything, only if she was transferred from her current institution, which was Musey Correctional Institution, to a minimum security prison in Cambridge Springs. During a series of interviews, she provides that she provided the kitchen timers used for the bomb, and claims that Rothstein masterminded the plot and that Wells was involved with the plan. So this is kind of where the Wells was supposed to be in on it but didn't know it was a real bomb kind of thing starts. This is the first time law enforcement knows that Wells could have been involved. Prior to this, they think he's just a victim. He had bad circumstance, whatever.
I'm inclined to not believe her, just personally.
So looking back on this, I don't think Wells is involved, or at the very least, he knew what he was doing. At the very least, he was too trusting. Like, of course they're going to give you a real bomb. Of course they're going to kill you. She stated that Rothstein masterminded the plot, and Wells had been directly involved in the plan. So in late 2005, Barnes, who was in jail on charges unrelated, drug charges unrelated.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Yes, go ahead.
So, did the Wells case, the neck brace bomb, that case, did that come up during their trial at all? Was that a thing that was even involved in?
From what I'm given here, she's sentenced and put away before they even know anything about Wells. Like, her trial is over with. Like, she's already put away behind bars. And she's been away behind bars for 4 months before Wells is even brought up.
Okay, so she's put away without them even, like, really knowing a motive for the murder?
Yeah, no, by the time, like, the case is over and everything about the murder of Roden, they know jack shit about Wells. Wells is, like, as far as they know, the Wells case and Roden are not tied in the slightest. Other than Rothstein's suicide note, for the audience at home, that was an air quote, mentioned this is not connected to the Wells case. That's the only mention of Wells in this entire... in the entire part of the James Roden case before April of 2005.
I don't know. It's just based on the information you've given so far. I feel like even mentioning the Wells case in a note that they found should have tipped them off.
From what I understand, no one brought up, other than the suicide note. I bet you they looked into it because, like, what police department at least doesn't look into it a little bit. I don't think anyone cracked until Armstrong cracked on that part. Like, everyone held strong.
So basically, like, the cops probably had a hint that maybe they were involved in some way because of the mention of that in the note, but, like, they could never bring it up because they didn't have any evidence of it, basically.
Yeah, basically. Like, other than the suicide note, like, saying, hey, the Wells case wasn't involved. And it could be like, hey, this is close to... Because this is just, like, this is less than a month, like, less than 30 days since the Wells case. They're like, oh, maybe he was a friend, or maybe he was distraught over this person getting killed, or blah, blah, blah. Because, while I'm not saying it's prevalent, sometimes, like, hey, this traumatic thing happens in the community, someone else commits suicide.
Okay, I think I get it, yeah.
I am just saying that it's possible that law enforcement, without being super negligent, given the circumstances in their shoes, could have dismissed that at the time, like, from their point of view. You gotta remember, a lot of investigative work is guesswork, but also, like, you're not going to have everything at the time. You're not going to be able to have the hindsight that we do, and you're not going to know a lot of the shit we do. And they're not going to be able to, like, say, hey, I should have looked here. Like, or this is the smart place to look because we're looking with rose-tinted glasses. And we're looking with modern-day ideas of investigation. So Barnes, who is in jail with unrelated drug charge, was turned in by his brother-in-law after revealing details of the crime to him. September 3rd of 2008, so we're jumping 3 years ahead. Barnes pleads guilty to rob a bank and to aiding and abetting. December 3rd that year, he was sentenced to 45 years in prison by a federal judge in Erie for his role in the crime. It was later reduced to 22.5 years after he testified against Armstrong. Jumping back to 2007, U.S. Attorney Mary Beth Buchanan announced that Armstrong and Barnes were being charged with the crime, with Armstrong as the mastermind. And I agree. I feel like Armstrong was the brain behind everything. She may have not done a lot of the she manipulated everyone, is what I believe. Like, this was all her idea, and she just, like, manipulated men around her to do it.
Yeah, from the way that you're described, like, she seems to have, like, a very central role. Like, her personality just kind of pops out in all of this entire situation. It seems like her thoughts and ideas seem to keep coming up with all of everything that keeps coming out.
Buchanan, the U.S. attorney, believed that Wells, not Armstrong, had been involved in the plot from the beginning, but his co-conspirators put a real bomb so that witnesses, essentially. And here's where, like, I should have brought it up earlier. There was no way to remove the bomb. Beyond the time limit, beyond not being able to get the scavenger hunt, there was no way to safely remove the bomb without death. Like, the bomb would go off no matter what. Wells was not walking away that day. Beyond not being able to get to the clue. Like, the way it's described, I think the scavenger hunt was a red herring. I don't think there was any way to remove the bomb, from what I've seen. Like, even if he had gotten there in time.
Honestly, as far as the crime goes, like, probably the smartest decision that they made.
I hate to agree, but I agree. Like,
Yeah, it fucking sucks, but it is the if you're going to do this crime, that is the smart thing to do.
I know I'm kind of all over the place with stuff, but you remember how I mentioned that Rothstein had another reason why he turned in Armstrong and why he mentioned the Roden case, right? It's because he had an ace up his sleeve.
Oh boy, tell me more.
On January 23rd of 2004, Rothstein was admitted to Mill Creek Community College after having been previously diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. He had cancer. He knew he was going to die.
Oh.
He knew there was nothing they could do to him, essentially, is the underlying thing.
Oh, fuck. Okay.
So, in Armstrong's trial, July 29th, first. So, after he was admitted on the 23rd of July, Rothstein died on July 30th at the age of 60. So, that's why he turned on Armstrong, is because he knew he was dying.
Yeah.
Simple as that. And I think he kind of realized it's not outright thrown in the case. This is me reading behind the twin lines. This is my, if you want to have apply the term headcanon to a criminal case, I think he was pining over Armstrong his entire life, but he realized Armstrong was never going to reciprocate in a meaningful way again, is what I kind of read into it personally. And then once Armstrong went to trial, which the trial began on July 29th, 2008, so a whole 5 years after the death of Wales. 1 month short, obviously, but District Court Judge Sean J. McLaughlin initially found that Armstrong was mentally incompetent to stand trial due to a numerous amount of mental disorders. And I didn't mention earlier when introducing Armstrong, but she suffered from multiple mental illnesses. She was at least bipolar, confirmed, and in her in her 20s, she it's described that her mental health deteriorated at that time. They don't really say what, but they don't really get into that, obviously. But it sounds like, as much as I hate to give her an out, and I'm not really giving her out, because she absolutely, even with her mental deficiencies, her mental illnesses, she absolutely knew what she was doing. This was all malicious. This was all on the level. From everything I know about law enforcement, everything I know about our laws, 100% she should have been found guilty and put to the death penalty for what she did. On a lot of the things she did. She obviously... So, for audience at home, as someone who has studied criminal justice, being able to claim the insanity defense or mental illness or whatever is usually not feasible if you can pass two things. Could you establish right from wrong, and did you mean to do it? That's all that you have to be established to be in the right state of mind. Doesn't matter if you've had other things or whatever. Now, don't get me wrong, mitigating factors essentially affecting how long your sentence or whether you should be put to the death penalty. Mental illnesses can be a mitigating factor, but just being able insanity defense, all is you have to as a prosecutor has to beat you is, did you know right from wrong? Essentially, that's all they need to prove, if you knew right from wrong. And it's hard to argue not knowing right from wrong unless you're in a heat of the moment thing, or unless you're worse than Forrest Gump mental deficiency wise. I mean, Forrest Gump knew right from wrong, but you have to really be mentally deficient or really gone mental illness wise to not know right from wrong.
To be to that point, you have to practically be in the middle of a psychotic episode. You need to be.
So getting back to Armstrong's trial, this ruling about being incompetent to stand trial was subject to review after a stint in a mental hospital, which is actually, from what I understand, pretty normal. You've got one test, but they usually use a battery of tests. They test you a couple different times. They don't want to just assume one, they don't want you to think you've tricked one of the either psychologist, therapist, whatever. I don't remember the exact titles of people. Whoever's evaluating your mental health, essentially. They don't want you to think, they don't want to have been tricked, which is actually very easy. You can trick one, but if you trick multiple people, it's less likely, essentially, is what the idea is. She served at a mental health facility in Texas, surprisingly, from Pennsylvania to Texas. But getting back to the trial, on February 24th of 2009, McLaughlin, the judge, scheduled a hearing for the 11th of March to determine if Armstrong was now confident. By that September, so like basically most of the year had gone by, she was determined that she was competent. Then almost a whole nother year later, in 2010, Armstrong took the stand to testify on her behalf. She had also asked for a change of venue.
Yeah.
I feel like this article is like this paragraph's putting it out of context. Like, I don't know if it's putting it in exact chronological order is what I'm saying, but I'm just reading it as it comes, so I'm going to assume it's in chronological. Probably is not, though. She asked for a change of venue, arguing that media coverage prevented her from receiving a fair trial. Media coverage can prejudice the jury. However, at the time of the Wells case, this was a nationwide thing. Everyone heard about the Wells.
Yeah, that's something I was just thinking about. Like, a bomb strapped to a man's neck that ends up going off and blowing a hole in his chest. Like, that's a story that you can't really get jurors away from.
Exactly. From people who paid attention to stuff like this at the time, everyone I've talked to has, I vaguely remember something about that. Like, even if they're not like true crime aficionados, people who like this was like national news at the time.
Yeah, you'd have to get like 12 mountain men on the jury to essentially to get like 12 preppers who just live up in the fucking Rockies to agree to be on these juries to be able to get somebody who's never heard of this case.
After all of that, it was denied by McLaughlin. She noted that the allegations were unusual. The news coverage as a whole has been about as factual and objective as it could be given the circumstance. Basically, there was no bias when they were reporting it. They were just saying what happened. Just because the judge is saying just because everyone knows about the crime doesn't mean they're prejudiced.
Honestly, that's fair.
Yeah.
Like, there's some distance from the crime, and like news coverage of the crime isn't gonna like I think the details are detached, like the details of the conspiracy of the crime are detached enough from like the actual reporting of the crime to say that's probably a fair assessment.
Definitely. On November 1st, Armstrong was convicted on armed bank robbery, conspiracy to commit armed bank robbery, and using a destructive device in a crime. Sucks she wasn't convicted of murder.
Yeah.
I can see an argument for both her not being convicted of murder, but also being convicted of murder on Wells. Like, I can see both arguments.
Explain your perspective on the not convicted, because I don't know, it seems like...
So, from my perspective, for all she knew, like, when she went into, like, the plan for the bank robbery, it was still, from her perspective, it could have been still a fake bomb plan. Like, it's hard to prove she knew it was going to be a real bomb from everything we know.
Okay, I can see that.
This is me intuition, me reading into people, me being a jaded human being. She definitely knew it was going to be a real bomb. Does that mean we can prove she knew it was going to be a real bomb?
Okay. Yeah, you convinced me. Yeah, I could see that perspective. Yeah, I'm in the same boat. Like, it seems obvious that it's obvious that she was part of this. That
it's very obviously like she helped plan it. She did all that. It's hard to prove she actually wanted Wells to die.
Yeah, for what it's worth, as many problems as our criminal justice system has, like, they do have a reliance on actual evidence, which I can appreciate
for the most part. But getting back on topic, February of 2011, February 28th, the very last day of February that year, she was sentenced to life in prison.
Oh, fuck.
She deserves it.
Yeah, that's pretty steep. Yeah.
But it was a consecutive sentence to be served with her, I think, 7 years to 20 years from the Roden murder.
Yeah, but life is life. Like,
no, it's not.
Well, yeah, parole, but like,
and if you have life with the chance of parole after just 20 years, so generation, like how generations are separated by supposedly 20 years, you can start for parole. Most of the time you don't get it, but after 20 years, in most states, you can start seeking parole if you have life with chance for parole.
Yeah, that's something I was just thinking about is like even 20 years. Like
I feel like if you get life with, I think you should have a defined term. Like, I don't care if it's not a standardized thing. There shouldn't be life with possibility. It should be this amount of years with parole. I don't think it should be life with parole. Life is life. There's no possibility of parole if you get life, personally.
but something I was just thinking about, like if you get a life sentence but you get the opportunity for parole in like 20 years, still think about like 20 years in prison, like what that does to a person and like what that means for the
Like we were saying, she was sentenced to life in prison to be served consecutively with her prison term in 2005 for Roden's murder. She appealed to the Third Circuit, but they affirmed her conviction. Then in January of 2013, the U.S. Supreme Court also told her to keep fucking off because they denied her petition for certiorari. But whatever. By 2015, she had no more appeals left. Apparently, she appealed again in 2015, but it wasn't going anywhere. So that's pretty much where the convictions end, because Rothstein died in 2004. Then Stockton, who was our pedophile, this is where he ended up. He actually died of respiratory failure it doesn't give a date. No, he did die. It does give a date. He is our most recent death. So August of last year of 2022, August 10th, he died at the approximate age of 74 to 75. His death was ruled an accident. Respiratory failure probably was an accident. Like we already know, Rothstein died in 2004 from non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And then Kenneth Barnes, the crack dealer and the fishing buddy, died of diabetes in prison in June 20th of 2019 at the approximate age of 64 to 65.
died of diabetes. That is that's kind of troubling because diabetes is something that can be treated.
So he was the one who was supposed to be paid off to kill Armstrong's father. And then Armstrong died on April 4th, 2017 at the age of 68 due to breast cancer in prison. So all of the people involved in this case are unfortunately died. Most recently died was Stockton, our pedophile, who he's the one who lived with Rothstein, and from what I understand, wasn't really directly involved in the case, but probably knew details of the case. So earlier I mentioned a really good documentary on Netflix by the name of Evil Genius. And the reason why I mentioned that is, I think I mentioned it earlier, there was some extra information that came out of that, from that wasn't originally known. And what came out of that was a confession from a hooker, of all things. In 2018, Jessica Hopsick. And keep in mind, there's parts I'd left out. Apparently, Jessica Hopsick's phone number and her name, I don't know if it was full name or just first name, were found in Wells' apartment. Is from where I'm remembering. Don't quote me on that, but that's what I remember. From what is known at the time is Jessica Hopsgett was a prostitute that Wells would occasionally visit. He would get his jollies from her every once in a while. It was an occasional thing. From what happened is she says a conspirator approached her to find a gopher who could act as a bank robber. Supposedly it was Barnes who came up to her. So Barnes was, if I'm not remembering names well in this case, so I'm gonna have to scroll up. So Barnes was our crack dealer and Armstrong's fishing buddy. Yeah, he was the one who was supposedly going to murder Armstrong's father, essentially. And Hopsgett identified Barnes because she described him as a pushover. This is a 2018 confession, so this is 15 years removed from the crime. She never said anything prior. Yes, her name came up when searching his apartment, but like not really directly tied to the crime. Like, as far as we know, she didn't have anything to do with it until like she confessed in 2018, supposedly. She admitted to setting up Wells in exchange for money and drugs. Most people at the time who sold their body were also addicts. Like, most people who sell their bodies in general, at least, I want to say before, like, sex work became more accepted, more modernly, I want to say it was, like, 2016, 2018, it became a little bit more accepted. You agree, Derek?
Yeah, kind of a little bit, yeah.
I feel like before then it was more, a lot of people sold their body for drug money. Outside like Nevada or like places where prostitution was legalized, at least in most towns that had like very little illicit trades at the very least, because this didn't feel like it had a very large illicit trades scenario. ATF agent Jason Wick stated Hopsgett was not cooperative in 2003, but believes she was more informed in the case than she let on. But he also believes she may not be a credible witness. She's an admitted drug user. She was a prostitute at the time. There's a lot of reasons that her current testimony is putting her in a good light. And a lot of stuff here that we have to keep in mind is this whole narrative we have feels more like we had this kind of idea in the confessions we got kind of furthered that or like shaped that narrative. Like, I 100% believe that because it really doesn't feel like they did a lot of deep investigating, a lot of true detective work. There's not really too much to the story, but like I said before, the case received national coverage in the media here in America. It was less than 2 years since the 9/11 attacks. And in fact, I didn't know this, but apparently the first theories, because it took a whole month before, like, what was his name? Rothstein, pardon me. Before Rothstein called the cops. And even then, it wasn't till April of 2004 before the Wells case was truly brought up in a significant way other than the suicide note. It was believed that the the collar bombing could have been a terrorist related. And it was actually, this case was actually featured 3 times on America's Most Wanted. And each time that they aired the case, they had new details. Because this developed slowly over, like, 5 or more years. Like, depending on, like, how you viewed it and when they updated. I don't know when these episodes happen. It has a lot of intricate parts. So it's been a story that's held people's minds. In 2011, Wired ran a story on it. 2012, there was a book published, Pizza Bomber, the Untold Story of America's Most Shocking Bank Robbery. I don't feel like that's our most shocking bank robbery in general. Maybe America's, maybe they got it right. But, like, I've seen a movie based on a real story where, like, that was a really, I wouldn't say shocking, but, like, complex bank robbery. It's basically detailing a crime. Like I mentioned earlier, Netflix released in 2018 Evil Genius, the true story of America's most diabolical bank heist. Very clickbaity title. Very long-winded. Very weird. Covers the case. Actually covers does some real investigative work. Doesn't just, like, you know, some documentaries where they get some experts to testify and it's like there's no real new ground treaded. They actually treaded new ground with this, like, documentary.
Yeah, I feel like the title gives them a little too much credit, but
I feel like it's more self-important. It's like giving too much context to it, but what the fuck ever. In 2011, a distasteful movie was released. Supposedly unrelated, but I don't fucking believe them. The movie is called 30 Minutes or Less, and it depicts a pizza delivery man being forced to wear a bomb vest and rob a bank, with the mastermind seeking the money to hire a hitman to kill his father and receive his inheritance.
Okay, yeah, I think I've heard of this before.
The film's similarity to the Wells case was criticized by Wells's family, but Sony Pictures Motion Picture Group, really fucking weird name by the way, said the cast and crew were unaware of the Wells case and the screenwriters were quote unquote vaguely aware with it.
Yeah, I don't believe that.
That's just too close to, like, say you did that on accident. Like, that's very intentional in my eyes. And it's very tasteful to recreate something like this. I am very firm believer if either everything is okay in comedy or nothing is okay in comedy. But even then, creating a comedy movie based on this, like, yes, make a joke or two or something based on this. But recreating it in a movie like that, I feel like is a step too far. So, Derek, what do you think? Could you have anticipated anything based on that video of you seeing a man dying?
This is so much more than I ever expected to actually find. This is so much more than I could have possibly predicted. It's honestly, it's so much dumber than I possibly could have predicted.
That's the thing. When you first hear, if you just heard of the collar part and that they found the killers, you would think, oh, that's a pretty, like, sophisticated thing. Yes, they got caught, but, like, that's a pretty sophisticated crime. Whatever. Like, yeah, they kidnapped a person. Like, it's not too, like, how the fuck did this even work out kind of thing. Then you look into the case and you find out that the only reason they were found out is because someone decided, hey, I've got cancer. This woman I've probably been secretly pining for the last 30, 40 years isn't ever going to love me back in the meaningful way. Asked me to destroy a dead body she asked me to hold on to in my freezer. That in itself is like, what the fuck? But then you find out, oh, the real reason why Wells died is because he was supposedly going to be a part of it. I still find a hard time believing that. Was a co-conspirator to what was supposed to be a fake armed robbery. Like, okay, for one, it's hard to believe because they only were going to steal enough for the person who was supposed to kill Armstrong's father to kill Armstrong's father. What does Wells get out of that if they only steal just enough for the person who's going to kill the father to kill the father? Like, where does his cut come in? That 100% puts me out of Wells being involved.
Plus, did they have any prior interaction? Is there any evidence that they ever interacted before then?
Supposedly, like, I don't know if it was exactly the day before the crime, but like either a day or a couple days before the crime, they had a planning meeting that supposedly Wells was a part of, but there's no proof Wells was a part of it.
Yeah, imagine there's probably wasn't.
I'm a firm believer that Wells was a victim the entire way. That he had no actual involvement. It's just a stupefying case of redneckery, personally, like white trashery, let me put it that way. Because that puts a bad sting on like the actual origin of redneck. We both know it. We're not going to get into it. But I use the current modern interpretation rather than the original interpretation, and I apologize for that when I say a lot of redneckery.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Actually, what's incredible about this is I think it inspired another bomb hoax. The fuck? This is a quick side note at the end. The Mossman, M-O-S-Man, so Mossman, bomb hoax took place in Lower Northern Shore, Sydney suburb of Mossman, New South Wales, Australia, on August 3rd, 2011. An apparent collar bomb was placed around the neck of 18-year-old student Madeline Pulver by balaclava clad home intruder. A note attached to the device stated that any attempt to alert law enforcement would, quote, trigger an immediate Brian Douglas Wales event. The dummy bomb was sophisticated enough that it took their equivalent of the bomb squad, it's called Police Rescue and Bomb Disposal Unit, almost 10 hours to figure out it was a fake, then dismantle and remove it, in part with the telephone assistance of British Army major who was in Australia for training. It was treated as an extortion investigation. What the fuck? Paul Douglas Peters, a man with no direct links to the victim or her family, was arrested in Kentucky after leaving Australia a few days after the incident. Police were unsure of the motive, but were not looking for other suspects. Peters was extradited to Australia on September 24th, 2011, and was held without bail by New South Wales police. On March 8th, 2012, He pleaded guilty in Sydney's Central Local Court to aggravated breaking and entering and detaining for advantage. On November 20th of 2012, Peters was sentenced to a prison term of 13 years and 6 months and was with a non-parole period of 10 years. That's weird way of putting it, whatever. In sentencing, the judge said although Peters had marital and mental... Why would marital issues be a factor? But whatever. And mental health issues, he engaged in a deliberate act of extortion, was not in a psychotic state at the time of the offense. Peters appealed his sentence to the New South Wales Court of Appeals on December 20th, 2013. The court unanimously dismissed the appeal. There's not a whole lot of motive information here. He was convicted and sentenced to 13.5 years with a minimum of 10 years. Yeah, I said that already probably, but whatever. But that's weird. It theoretically inspired that case. I didn't get to this part, but do you want to know the most ironic part of this case that should Armstrong have been successful in her attempt to receive her father's inheritance? Armstrong reportedly coveted the inheritance Armstrong reportedly coveted was ultimately denied to her. Her father's estate had once been evaluated at $1.8 million. So she would have set to inherit a decent amount of... But with gifts to friends, it had lowered the value to less than $120,000 at his death in January 2014. At the age of 95. Armstrong's father lived to 95.
So if she had ever actually gotten that, it would have been less money or less value than the amount of money that the bank robbery actually took.
So she only lived 3 years more than her father. 3 more years. In an interview, Harold, Armstrong's father, reported he had cut off financial support for his daughter decades, Derek, earlier due to her criminal behavior and failure to hold a steady job. His last will and testament left $2,000 to Armstrong, but the state's obligation to pay outstanding medical bills before inheritance meant she received nada. Jack shit. Plus, if you're incarcerated, you don't really usually get to receive inheritance or any kind of financial benefit related to your crime for the most part. Like, most of the time you're not allowed to make money due to like selling movie rights or story rights or anything like that from your crime. Any final thoughts on this story, Derek?
Just, God, this was such a fucking... This story is so much dumber than I expected it to be.
Yeah. I didn't remember how stupid this story was. Nor did I really... I had heard this story before. Wendigoon does an amazing job. Even honestly, he's just a great YouTuber in general.
Yeah, I've watched a couple of videos from him.
Any final words before we part, Derek?
None from me. Just,
So, Derek, where can they find you on social media?
They can find me on Twitter at Visigoth. The first I has a 1, the O is a 0. They can find me on Blue Sky at Visigoth dot whatever, all that bullshit after it is. The first I is a regular I. The O is a 0 as usual. Tim, where can they find you and all of the podcast information?
So they can find me at both Twitter and Blue Sky, because Derek is a real G, at Tim, a.k.a. Otis. And they can find the podcast at the Alexandria Society on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter at Alex Society Pod. We should have a Blue Sky here pretty soon. I haven't set it up yet, but I will soon. TikTok at Alexandria Society, where we post either beer reviews or outtakes from the podcast that just really didn't make sense in the like funny little silly things me and Derek have done while we're drunk, or like joking back and forth with each other.
Yeah, pretty much.
If you enjoyed what you've heard, please give us a rate and review on your streaming platform of choice, or following us on one of the platforms we mentioned prior. We hope you enjoyed this, and we will see you next time. Have a great one. Bye.
Bye.